Hi, so we're winding down the semester, and one of the last exercises we'll do is we're going to do an exercise where we learn how to make selections in Photoshop. Now you can see I've kind of got my favorite setup for doing Photoshop work here. I've got a large screen, but I'm working off of my Surface Pro tablet. The Surface Pro is nice because it works like a full-size laptop or computer, and I can run Photoshop on it. And the really great thing about it is that it's got a touch screen, and I can do my selections right on the screen. I can just trace the outline of my fruits and vegetables. You see I'm doing this really quickly here. And it's a lot easier than using a mouse. But a mouse will work just fine. If you get serious about Photoshop, you might want to get some type of surface that you can draw on, like a touchscreen computer that runs Photoshop. Or if you want to go cheap, you can just get one of these drawing tablets. This has a pen that goes with it. And you draw on this surface right over here. The problem with this is you can't really trace your subject. You see it up on the screen, but it still works a little bit better than the mouse, although you've got to get used to it, where this is really intuitive. I'm going to open my file right in Photoshop today because I'm just using one file. We've got Veggie Man. And I don't know if any of you guys played with Mr. Potato Head when you were young. And Mr. Potato Head was a toy where you had these plastic face pieces and you would put them on a potato and make a Mr. or there was also a Mrs. Potato Head version, Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. Well, today we're going to make Mr. or Mrs. Veggie Man, and we're going to use this melon, so it'll be a melon head, and these vegetables and fruits and bow tie pasta in order to come up with a kind of interesting looking image. This is a really common exercise in Photoshop. I'm going to start introducing you to some of the shortcut keys. When you start to do selections, shortcuts can come in really handy. So to enlarge our image, we just hit the Control or the Command plus key, and that'll expand our image. If we're in this little hand tool, which is a good place to be if we're not doing anything else, we can also hit Fit Screen, Fill Screen. And if we want to make our image smaller, we can hit Control on the PC or Command on the Mac and then the minus key. So we're going to be getting in close on some of these images and doing some selections, and that can be really helpful. Anytime that I come into Photoshop and bring an image in, and it's just good habit to get into, I want to duplicate my background layer. And that means I'm working on my background layer and not my original photograph. Now, hopefully you saved a copy of your photograph, and if you screwed stuff up, you can go back to it that way. But it's a lot easier to be able to just delete a layer and not have to worry about things. All right, so whether you're working in CS2 or CS6, you're going to have similar selection tools. CS2 is missing probably the selection tool that I use all the time, and that's why you pay the big bucks to upgrade. Your basic tools are going to be over here. If I wanted to make this look more like the CS2 menu, I can just hit this arrow key and you got the doubled up menu like you do in CS2. I'm going to move it back because I'm used to working in CS6. And these are your basic selection tools. You have your shape tools, you have your basically freehand drawing tools, and then you've got your easy selection tools. So these are the ones that I use all the time. In fact, in CS6, I almost always use this quick selection tool. I can click on it, and that works really well for me. And under these three basic selection tools, you also have some hidden tools. You've also got an elliptical marquee tool, and that can be a nice tool. I don't like it so much for selections. It's kind of limited. But it can be a nice tool for portraits. Sometimes you want to put a marquee around your subject. You can make your marquee and then you can bring it in and move it a little bit. And you might want to white out or blur your background a bit. So you can use these selection tools in regular photographs to just select one area of the photo and work on it. or to select an area and then do interesting effects to your background outside of the area. So that's another way that you can really use these tools to your advantage. Working on your Veggie Man is just going to give you a way to learn how to use the tools a little bit and manipulate them. Another shortcut key, if you hit Control or Command and then a D, you're going to deselect your tool. All right, so let's start with these easier tools. I'm just going to go over the basics on how to do selections. I'm not going to do the complete Veggie Man. I'll leave that up to you. I'll just show you some of the tricks. And there's a lot of different ways you can combine these fruits and vegetables and bow ties to make this either Veggie Man or Veggie Woman. You don't have to do it the same way that I do. So I'll just start you out and then I'll leave you on your own. You can create your own Veggie Man or Veggie Woman. All right, let's start with the easier tools first. If you're in CS6, maybe the only selection tool you ever need to use except for specialized items is this quick selection tool. Let's work on our carrot. I'm going to hit the Control+ key to bring it up and move it over with the hand tool. Now we'll be using a different move tool up here, and the difference between the hand tool and this other move tool is that the hand tool doesn't really move anything in your photograph. It's simply moving things so you see them differently on your screen, but it's not impacting your photograph. That's why it's always a good tool to be on when you're not doing anything, so you don't accidentally hit and delete something or make marks on your photograph. All right, and let's use this easiest tool first, and truthfully, you can use this one for almost everything. And this is your quick selection tool. Watch me click this carrot. And it pretty much clicked the whole thing, and I can maybe just refine it a little bit around the edges, and that's cool. And if we want to make our brush a little smaller, or if we want to feather the edges, make it less hard, we can fool with these sliders in here. Just click somewhere else to get out of it. All right, so I've actually selected the carrot here, but I want to show you how to do it with some other tools. I'm going to hit Control D to deselect. And for those of you that are using CS2, we're going to use the magic wand. Okay, so here's the magic wand, and you see it didn't do quite as good a job of selecting the whole carrot. So let's click on another spot, and you see what's happening here? It's making a new selection every time. Well, we can tell it to do something different by messing with these tools up in here. And different tools have different defaults. If it's on this one, it makes a new selection every time. We want to add to the selection. So we're going to click this one, which is Add to Selection. If you click on this, it subtracts. And this one over here is an intersection tool, which I really don't use very much. Okay, so now we can just keep clicking. You can see this takes a few more steps. And I messed it up over here a little bit. So you could go to the minus tool. You want to make that real small right now. Maybe just click around this edge a little bit. Okay, so now I've got it pretty well perfect. If I wanted to make a copy of that carrot, which I'm going to need to do, probably the best way to do it is to make a copy via a new layer. So I'm going to do that right now. So now it put me on this new layer. I'm going to show you some different ways that you can do this, use the selection tools before we go back and move things around. Let me go back to my background copy that I'm working on. Let me actually label my layer by double clicking on it. And I'm going to call this carrot. Let's look at some of the other tools. So I'm going to use one of these more difficult selection tools. I'm going to use my Lasso Tool. And with the Lasso Tool, there's three different types of lassos. There's the regular Lasso Tool, which basically lets you freehand draw. It's not a circle or anything like that. Then there's a Polygonal Lasso Tool, which lets you do straight edges, octagon, pentagon, something like that. The Polygonal Lasso Tool will really be good for. And there's a Magnetic Lasso Tool, which lets Photoshop sees your edges and tries to hug your edges. So let's use that, try to select our pair. And you see the magnetic lasso tools doing a fairly decent job of sticking around the edges here. And once you get to the end, if you double click, you get your selection. Now let me just hit Control deselect again and show you something that happens with this. You start doing stuff and then you go like this, and then you start to go over here to do something else, and your hand's not actually touching down on the mouse key, but the lasso tool still moves. Okay, that's a pain in the neck. And it doesn't actually finish doing that until you double click on your endpoint, and then it makes your selection. So I'm going to show you my other favorite thing for refining my selection. And again, this is in either CS2 or CS6. And that's this quick mask tool. Okay, so if you click on the quick mask, okay, let me double click on it first. You can either define that you want to work on your masked area, or you can define that you want to work on your selection a little bit more. We want to do a better job of masking, and then we want to do some selection. So let me do my masked area first. And you can have different colors of your masks. Masks are a really powerful tool in Photoshop. We haven't really gotten into using them, but if you learn to use Photoshop a little bit more, you'll learn a lot more about masks. Okay, so let me click on this quick mask again, and it shows you my selection. Now, with this, rather than using a selection tool to refine my selection, I need to go over to this brush tool. And usually the default works pretty well. You can make this circle larger or smaller. And this is another great shortcut by hitting these bracket keys. So if we want to make our selection bigger, we hit the right bracket key. If we want to make it smaller, we hit the left bracket key. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bigger now. You can go up and change your opacity and your flow. And I just want to paint that out. So this is really useful. You paint it out. You can see I've got some spots over here. And I maybe could have refined my brush and made it a little smaller so I didn't end up staying on the pear over there. So now I want to change it. So I'm going to go back to my mask, double click on it, and I want to refine the selected area. Okay, go to my bracket key. I want to make this real small. And maybe this is where I want to go up and use my pen with my Surface Pro, because it is a lot easier to do that. Make it a little smaller. I'm going out of the edges here. I made my picture a little bigger so I can work on it better. So I had to go back to the hand tool. Now I'll go back to the brush tool. And you can do this pretty well with the mouse, but this is where I'm going to go into my pen, and I can really hug those edges a little bit easier. I've got some stray pixels on the outside, so I just double click again. Change it back to the masked area. And then just go in, click on my mask again, and deal with those stray pixels. All right, the other way I could find things would be, again, to go through with I'm going to use the regular lasso tool and go back and draw. And at this point, I want to add, so make sure I'm on my add. And then just go along my edges again. And I want to do it in circles, because with the lasso tool, you have to hit the other end. If I want to subtract something from it, just kind of go and make a circle around, and it subtracts it. Okay, we're spending a lot of time doing this, and truthfully, I could hit Control D and the magic wand or the quick select tool will probably do a much better job. But if you're working with a photo and you spend a lot of time on a selection, what you might want to do so you don't mess it up or you can go back to the same thing is go up to the select and you can actually save your selection. And we'll save this as our pair. All right, I'm going to hit Control D now. I've already got it saved. And just to show you, even for you CS2 users, the Magic Wand's going to do a much better job on this stuff. So make sure I've got it on plus and just keep clicking there. Can make my tolerance. Remember, I made it smaller before. Maybe make it bigger again. And here we go. We've got a pretty nice looking pair there. The quick selection will probably even do a better job. Just take that little piece off here. Maybe make my tolerance a little smaller to do that. And there we go. No drawing tool needed. Okay, so let's actually make a copy of that. Layer via copy. Call that, double click on it, call it our pair. Okay, so we've got a pair layer. All right, before we start doing some other selections, let's show you how to move stuff. I want to make this smaller now. So we're going to need 2 eyes and a nose. So right now I've got 1 eye, and in order to move my carrot, I've got to be on my carrot layer. So make sure you have that highlighted. Click your move key. Okay, so your move key is right up here. And there we go. Okay, now I actually need 2 eyes, don't I? I don't want to have to select another carrot. So let me just right click on my carrot layer and duplicate that layer. So now I want to move my second layer. And to move my second layer, remember I copy it after I moved it to here. So my copy is on top of this carrot and it's not over here. And you'll find that out. If you try to move it over there, you'll see that weird things happen. And if I want to reset my eyes and move the left carrot, I'm going to have to go back to this layer in order to move it. Okay. Those look pretty good. And now let's bring my nose down. To bring my nose down, I've got to click on that pair layer. And we'll bring our nose down and put it in there. Okay, that looks pretty good for an eyes. We can use the blueberry over here for an eyeball later. Let's look at some of our more complex things that we need to be able to select. All right, this bow tie, let's just try doing the magic wand with it. I've got the magic wand. Let me make sure I put it on plus. Oops, forgot to do something. I got to go down to my background copy again, right? Because I was working on my pair layer there. Let's do Control D, deselect. Now I'm on my background copy again. I can start selecting my bow tie. And it's doing an okay job. Let me deselect. This is actually one place where you might want to use this Polygonal Lasso Tool. And the way the Polygonal Lasso Tool works, I'm going to make this bigger. Bring it down by putting my hand tool on. And we'll go back up to the polygonal lasso. This works well for edges like this. And the problem is that this isn't a real high resolution photo. And there's not really enough difference between these edges and the shadow for either the magic wand or the quick selection tool to figure things out real well. So this is where you might want to work on this polygonal lasso tool. And the way this works is you select a point, and it makes a straight line from one point to the next. So when you think you kind of got it there, you click, you do another point, click up near the point. I don't have this quite right. This is definitely something where you're going to want to do your quick mask to come in and refine it. And just click every time that you want to go from one angle to the next. And it can be a couple of times on each little bow thing. And then this is where you can use multiple tools. I'm just going to go through and start to select with this. And you see with those long things, it does a really good job of doing long, straight things. It did a good job. All right, we don't have to be real exact here because I'm going to do some other stuff. And once you connect to your endpoint, you've made your selection. Now I'm just going to use one of the other tools to get the edges over in here a little bit better. And let's use our quick selection tool. That's a good tool. I need to make it smaller. I can use that bracket, left bracket key to make it smaller. I want to make sure I'm adding to my selection. Okay, because if you have a new selection, you can now just undo everything you did. So you need to be careful about that. I'm holding down my left mouse key and just kind of going around here. And you see it over selected a little bit in there. Well, actually I don't like that because it messed up my polygonal stuff that took me so long to do. So I need to go back and do step back, or else use my history tool till I get back to those edges. Let's try this one more time. That didn't work. Okay, so that means I need to use something else to select in here. And this may be where I just want to come in with my quick mask and do it that way. Again, first time, I'm just going to stick with my mouse. Oops, I left my selection tool on. I can do undo quick selection. I need to go back to my brush. We've got this really blown up, so we're getting some pixelation that you really wouldn't see that much on the final image when you do this. And now I want to go the other way because I've got some shadows and I've got some parts of the pasta in here that I want to make sure I have in the selection. So I'm going to double click on it, switch to my selected area. Okay. Oh, I see what my problem is. I've got it on dissolve up here. That's the issue. Okay, I want it on normal. So that's stuff. If you messed with something else in a previous time, you need to make sure you put it back. And now it's working the way I think it should. I went over the edges a little bit. I'll go back to my pen on this now that I've got it working right. And the pen works really nicely now. Yeah, you can see this is working really well. And I went over on a couple spots. See, it's so much better than when you're using a real pen and pencil because you can always go back and go over things again. Go back to my mask selection. Hit my quick mask again. And now I can just refine it a little bit more. This is probably your hardest thing that you have to do is this bow tie. And I would probably err on the side of going a little bit in on the pasta because once you select it, you're not really going to see that you didn't get the whole pasta. Whereas if you bring some white stuff over with you, you're going to see that. And just one more switch on my quick mask and then I should be able to get it okay. And there, that looks good. Now that selection actually took me a lot of time. I'm going to take my quick mask off. So that may be one I want to save in case stuff is messed up later and I wanted to go back. So we'll save this as bow tie. Just taking this bow tie without copying a layer and moving it over here. And it looks like we've still got our pasta there, but watch what happens if I take the background layer off. We have removed the pasta from the background copy layer. But since both layers were showing, it looks like the pasta is still there. Alright, so I think I've got you pretty well started on your selection tools, but there's one more thing I need to show you before I turn you loose to finish up your Veggie Man. And that is how to flip something. Okay, so let's go up to our quick selection tool. And I want to select these radishes here. I want to make it a little smaller, so I use my left bracket key just to get these radishes down in here. And notice that the default on the quick selection tool is to add to the selection. So this looks pretty good. There's a couple of stray pieces on there. I don't really need them for my radish collection. Now what I'm going to do is right click, layer via copy. Okay, so I've got this now as a layer. Make sure I've got this layer highlighted. Let's rename it so we know what it is. So double click on it. Radish greens. There's a few things I can do with this. I can make it into hair. I'm going to make a mustache. So we want to go to our move tool. Make sure our radish greens are highlighted when we move it. And we're going to move it over here. Now, here's the deal. This is kind of big for a mustache. So I want to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm also going to need one for the other side. So I'm going to make it smaller first because I want the two sides to be symmetrical. But you know, maybe I want to use these radish greens again for hair and I don't want to go and make my selection again. So I'm going to duplicate the layer just in case I need it later on. So what I'm going to do now is make these radish greens a little bit smaller. And what you want to do that is you want to make sure you've got your radish green layer selected. You want to go up into, and I'm going to put my hand tool on just so I don't do anything strange. I want to make this mustache a little bit smaller. So let me show you a tool that we can use for that. Go up to Edit, Free Transform, and you see it puts this box around it. Now, here's a problem right now. My other layer is visible, and I can't really see what I'm doing with this free transform. And I leave this kind of stuff on the video because I'm sure you'll run into the same problems, and you'll want to figure out how to remove it. So for now, I'm going to undo the free transform and make sure I make this layer not visible. Okay, now I'm going to go up into the free transform again, Edit, Free Transform, which you could hit the Control-T key instead. And we can make this, we can move this around, we can make it smaller, we can curve it. And there, I think that's a pretty nice mustache. But now we need one for the other side. So I'm going to check this. I like this one. I'm going to leave this layer highlighted. I'm going to make another copy. Okay, and with this one, I need to flip it. And the free transform won't really do that very easily. There's a much easier way to do that. So again, make sure I'm on my new copy now. Go up to Edit. And we do the regular transform. And we just flip it horizontally. Now we've got this other mustache layer. Go up to the Move tool, because I was on the Hand tool this time. And we can just bring this right back in and make our second mustache. And if we want to fool around with it a little bit more, make it smaller, make it bigger, we can go back up to that Free Transform tool again. So that looks pretty good. I've definitely turned this into a Veggie Man at this point. So now you've just got some other things to do. You can add your ears. You can use, it's got a chef's hat over here, a mouth. The blueberry makes a good eyeball. But again, I've seen these done in all different kinds of ways. So you can make this your own. You can use the radish as hair pieces, eyebrows, all kinds of things. At this point, I've shown you enough to let you loose to finish this up. You don't have to do it the same way I did at all. You can go and do some searches on the internet. I've seen this thing done in all kinds of different ways. You don't have to put it together the same way I did. You can make your own Veggie Man. Heck, you could even turn the melon on its side and probably come up with a way to make a veggie animal. So have fun with this. And in our next and last video, I'm going to show you some of the things you can do with real photographs by using the selection tool. So there is a method to this besides just making kind of a cool drawing. We can use the selection tool to, say, add somebody to a family portrait that wasn't there for the original shoot. So you can think about it. I've used the selection tool to add dramatic skies to a great photo I had, but with kind of a flat, not so great looking sky. Of course, there's some other things I have to do along with that, and it gets complicated. This will at least give you the basics on how to use these various selection tools.